Hey guys, so today you're going to be talking about midpoints and distance in the coordinate plane. Remember that you do need to watch and listen to this video, so please make sure you have your headphones in. But again, start with our lesson. We're actually moving on to sections now, so we're at 1-3, midpoints and distance in the coordinate plane. And we're going to find the midpoint and distance between 2 points in the coordinate plane. You don't have to write what's in blue, but definitely write what's in black. And you might need to pause it. All right, so the first thing we're going to review is how to find midpoint formula just using a number line. So we did this in preparation for our Chapter 1 quiz, but let's go ahead and review it. So this is the formula right here for our how to find the midpoint when you're given a number line. So you add the two numbers and you divide by 2. So in here, if the coordinate of h is 2, so we'll put h right here and we'll say that is h. And then the coordinate of j is 7. So we'll put a little dot, a little point there, and that's going to be j. If we want to find the midpoint, we're going to go ahead and use this formula in order to do so. So we're going to do 2 plus 7 divided by 2. 2 plus 7 is going to give us 9. And 9 divided by 2 is going to give us 4.5. So that's the midpoint here. So the midpoint on the actual graph is going to be right about there. And if you kind of look at it, it does look like the midpoint. So if you need to have time to copy this down, go ahead and do so, but please make sure you have this part in your notes. All right, so whenever we find the midpoint on a coordinate plane, we're just going to have to do the midpoint formula twice now. We have to do it once for the x value and once for the y value, because remember, coordinates have an x value and a y value. So we just have to do it twice. It's not any other different work. We just have to do it twice. So you might need to pause the video, but you definitely need to have this midpoint formula in your notes. So go ahead and do that. Now we're going to actually find the midpoint of this segment on the coordinate plane. So we were told that V is at 3, -6, which is right here. So we went to the right 3 and down 6. And then for M, we're at 7, 2. So we went right 7 times and then up 2. So we have our coordinates. So I'm going to rewrite the midpoint formula for the coordinate up top. It's just good habit to keep on writing them just so you have a good understanding of the formula and you can kind of memorize it so you won't have to maybe write it on your cheat sheet next time. So here, our midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then we have y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So again, it's the midpoint formula, but we just have to do it once for the x values and once for the y value. So for me, it doesn't really matter which one is your x1 or x2, but make sure you label them. So here, I'm going to label this x1, y1, and then I'm going to label this x2, y2. So the 3 is my x1 and the 7 is my x2. You could have done it the other way if you wanted your v to be your second point and then your m to be your first point. It does not matter. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the formula. So my x1 I have labeled as 3. So I'm going to do 3 plus 7 because that's my x2. And I'm going to divide that by 2. And then for my y's, I have -6 plus 2 divided by 2. Okay? And now we just do it like we would a regular midpoint. Add the two numbers up top and then divide by 2. So then here we're going to have 3 plus 7 is going to give us 10. And we'll divide that by 2. And then -6 plus 2 is going to give us -4 divided by 2. Okay? Now we're going to just divide. So then our actual midpoint is going to be +5, located at +5, -2. And if we were to actually do that, so +5, we go right 5 and down 2, this is about where the midpoint is going to be. And if you kind of look at it, it looks accurate. That's a possible midpoint area because it's in the middle between V and M. All right. So please make sure you got this example down. You don't really need the graph as much, but you definitely need to have this example right here so you at least know what coordinates you're working with. You might need to pause the video, which is fine, but you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep on going though. So now this is the distance formula. So before, when we had the distance on a number line, we just either counted or we subtracted the two and took the absolute value. Now, since we are dealing with x's and y's, we have to have a distance formula. So here we have the square root, and everything is underneath the square root. We're going to have y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. So that squared is on the outside. So remember PEMDAS, you have to do what's inside the parentheses first, and then you're going to square the number, and then you'll combine the two numbers, okay? So again, pause the video if you need to, but you definitely need to have this distance formula. Please make sure you have that in your notes. All right, so this is going to be the first example that we have. We want to find the distance between 6 and 6 negative 2 and negative 5, 3. So just like with my midpoint, I labeled my x1 and y1. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do x1, y1, and then x2, y2, just so I know which number is which. So like I did with the midpoint formula, I'm also going to write my distance formula again. Okay? So my distance formula, a huge square root sign. And then we have y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. All right, so again, make sure you have that distance formula there, just like we had it with the midpoint, okay? So if you needed a refresher, if you didn't write it down the first time, go ahead and write it down now. So now we're going to just go ahead and plug in what we know, just like we did with midpoint. So we know that our y2 right here is going to be the 3 minus our y1 here, which is the negative 2. So we have minus a negative 2 squared. And then for x's here, we have the x2 first, so that's negative 5, minus a positive 6. So we're going to just have minus 6 squared. All right? So as a reminder here, whenever we have 3 minus a negative 2, that turns it positive. Okay? So now this, I can go ahead and turn positive. Now let's go ahead and start combining what's inside our parentheses. We're still going to have a big square root. So 3 plus 2 is going to give us 5. And we're going to square that. And then negative 5 minus 6 is going to give us negative 11 squared. Okay? So make sure you go ahead and do that. And then what you can do is you can actually type all of this into the calculator now. So I can go ahead and show you in the calculator how you're going to do that. I'm going to have to flip back and forth though because my screen doesn't minimize. All right, so in order to find your square root button, you have to hit this second button right here because you got to go to these blues because you want this little symbol right there. You want that big square root. And if I remember correctly, it was 5 in parentheses, and then we're going to square it, plus a negative 11 in parentheses, and then we're also going to square that. So let's double check that that was the right one before I hit enter. So we have positive 5 squared plus negative 11 squared. And that looks good to me. So now going back to my calculator, see, everything is underneath the square root. The square root extended as I continued to right below it. So please make sure that everything is under the square root when you are typing it in. And then we're going to just hit enter. It gave us this, and I believe it said to round to the nearest 10th. So because we're rounding to the nearest 10th, we are going to have 12.1 as our answer for distance here. So our distance is 12.1 is our distance, all right? So please make sure you have this example down in your notes. Pause it if you need to, but make sure you have this down. You really could have honestly put all of this in your calculator, and I would have been fine with it as long as you show this step. You need to at least show this step on your work, on your practice coming up, because I need to see how you're plugging in your stuff. Okay? So pause it if you need to, but I'm going to continue. But make sure you have this example down. So now this is going to be, I believe this is our last slide. We want to find the midpoint and the distance between the 2 points, okay? So we have point 1, -1, and -4, +4. I'm going to actually go ahead and pause the video right now because I want you to have time to work this out on your own, see how you feel about it. I will show the solution of both on here, but I want you to work it out first. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video for about 5 seconds, and then the solution will come up. So hopefully you pause the video and now you actually have answers to compare with mine. If not, that's okay. So again, I labeled my x1, y1, my x2, and my y2, so I know what I was dealing with. Again, I rewrote my midpoint formula and my distance formula, so I knew what I was working with. I then just went ahead and plugged in the numbers that I had for my coordinates into the correct spots for the midpoint and for the distance formula. And then I cranked out the rest either in my head, and then I had to use my calculator on this point because I do not know what the square root of 50 is off the top of my head. So I hope you got the right answers here. If not, look over your work compared to my work and see where the discrepancies are and see where maybe you went wrong. And go ahead and fix your mistakes. If not, ask one of your neighbors to see what you did wrong and maybe they can help you out with that. So make sure you have this example down, and we are now off to practice. So your practice is a coloring worksheet. It is, I believe, 12 questions, and the worksheet itself is strictly on distance. So it gives you 2 coordinates, and it gives you 2 options for distance to choose from. So you'll work all 12 out to do distance, and then you can color, but you also have to do the midpoint. You also have to do the midpoint. It is on the board, so please make sure you're paying attention to the board. You have to do distance and midpoint, which this video is only gonna not even be 13 minutes long, so it shouldn't take you that long to copy down these notes. So you should have a good amount of time to actually work on the practice, okay? So remember, you have to do distance for those 2 points, like how it says on the worksheet, but you also have to do the midpoint. Send me any reminders or message me on Remind if you have any questions, or you can go ahead and email me. But good luck. This section isn't too bad, hopefully, and if you have any questions, I can answer them on Tuesday. You guys have a great weekend for Labor Day. I will see you on Tuesday.